She's a best-selling author and life coach, obsessed with helping women to silence their insecurities, build healthy boundaries, and fearlessly pursue the life and career of their dreams. Join her as she provides you with strategies and real-life tips to create your best life. Welcome to Fearless Fridays with Marianne.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Fearless Fridays with Marianne. Today, I have an amazing woman with us, and we are going to be talking about healing, mindset, and so much more. You are in for a treat, so make sure that you have your pen and paper ready. Dr. Debi Silber, welcome. How are you?
I'm doing great, thank you. Looking forward to our conversation.
Awesome. So who is Dr. Debi? Tell us about yourself.
Yeah, well, it's actually my 30th year in business, and as life would change, so would business. So I started in health and then mindset and then personal development. And then I had a really painful betrayal from my family. Thought I did everything I needed to do to heal from that. And then a few years later, it happened again. This time it was my husband. Anybody who's been through it, you're shocked, you're blindsided, you're devastated. So I got him out of the house, looked at the two experiences and thought, well, what's similar to these two? Of course, me, but what else? And realized, I had never taken my own needs seriously. Boundaries were always getting crossed. So I realized if nothing changes, nothing changes. So here I was, 4 kids, 6 dogs, a thriving business, and I decided to go back for a PhD. And it was in transpersonal psychology, the psychology of transformation and human potential. I was changing so much, I didn't quite understand what was happening. He was too on his own, was ready to look at that. And then it was time to do a study. So I studied betrayal. What holds us back? What helps us heal? And what happens to us physically, mentally, and emotionally when the people closest to us lie, cheat, and deceive? That study led to 3 groundbreaking discoveries, which changed my health, my business, my family, my life.
Amazing, amazing. So let's dig right in. What holds us back when it comes to betrayal?
Well, what holds us back is, number one, we don't realize or know, and I didn't either, there's a proven, predictable, research-based way to heal from all of it. And that was one of the 3 discoveries. I mean, the discoveries just clearly showed what betrayal does to us and what we need to do physically, mentally, and emotionally to move forward. And I'm happy to go through the discoveries if that would help.
Yes, definitely.
Sure. So the first one was, originally I was studying betrayal and post-traumatic growth. And for those who aren't familiar, post-traumatic growth is, if you can imagine, like an upside of trauma. How any trauma, death of a loved one, disease, natural disaster, leaves you with a new insight, awareness, perspective you didn't have before. But I had been through death of a loved one, and I had been through disease. And I was like, no, betrayal feels different to me. I didn't want to assume that it was the same for all my study participants. So I asked them, if you've been through other traumas besides betrayal, does it feel different? Every single one of them said, oh my gosh, it's so different. And here's why. Because it feels so intentional, we take it so personally. So the whole self is shattered and has to be rebuilt. Think about it: rejection, abandonment, belonging, confidence, worthiness, trust. They're all trashed and they all need to be rebuilt. So that type of healing, when you do that, needed its own name, which is now called post-betrayal transformation. The complete and total rebuild of your life and yourself after an experience with betrayal. That was the first discovery.
Wow. That's deep. That's deep. So how does someone start the healing process or the work to bouncing back?
Yeah, well, I mean, this kind of leads into the second discovery. There's so much to heal from, because we actually realized that there's this collection of symptoms, physical, mental, and emotional, so common to betrayal. It's known as post-betrayal syndrome. And I've had easily 50,000 people take the post-betrayal syndrome quiz on our site to see to what extent they're struggling. And a few things about that quiz. The first thing is, we've always heard time heals all wounds. I have the proof when it comes to betrayal that's not true. There's a question that says, is there anything else you'd like to share? And people write things like, my betrayal happened 35 years ago. I'm unwilling to trust. My betrayal happened, 15 years ago. It feels like it happened yesterday. So we know betrayal is a very different experience that needs its own protocol to heal. And every couple of months I pull the stats from the quiz. I'm happy to share them if that would serve.
Yes, sure. Definitely. Share it all.
Yeah, okay. So this is out of, imagine, men, women, just about every age is represented, just about every country is represented. So 78% constantly revisit their experience. 81% feel a loss of personal power 80% are hypervigilant. 94% deal with painful triggers. Those triggers are awful. So these are the most common physical symptoms. 71% have low energy. 68% have sleep issues. 63% have extreme fatigue. That's how you know your adrenals have tanked. 47% have weight changes. Maybe they can hold food down in the beginning. Later on, they're using food for comfort. 45% have digestive issues, and that can be anything. Crohn's, IBS, diverticulitis, constipation, diarrhea, you name it. The gut's a wreck. Mentally, 78% are overwhelmed. 70% are walking around in a state of disbelief. 68% are unable to focus. 64% are in shock. 62% can't concentrate. So imagine you can't concentrate. You have a gut issue. You're exhausted. You still have to work. You still have to raise your kids. That's not even the emotional ones. Ready? Emotionally, 88% experience extreme sadness. 83% are very angry. 82% feel hurt. 80% have anxiety. 79% are stressed. So just a few more. This is why I wrote the book, Trust Again. Ready? 84% have an inability to trust. 67% prevent themselves from forming deep relationships because they're afraid of being hurt again. 82% find it hard to move forward, and 90% want to move forward, but they don't know how.
So how does someone start moving forward?
Yeah. So, and you can see it's not like 20%, 30%. I mean, these numbers are high. So you can see the real impact. Well, you need to know what stage you're in. And that actually leads me to the third discovery. So this, for me, out of all the discoveries, was the most exciting. And what we learned was, while we can stay stuck for years, decades, a lifetime, and most people do, if we're going to fully heal, and by fully heal, I mean symptoms of post-betrayal syndrome to that whole healed state of post-betrayal transformation, we're going to go through 5 now proven predictable stages. What's even better about that is we even know what happens physically, mentally, and emotionally at every one of those stages, and we know what it takes to move from one stage to the next. So healing, to answer your question, is all about knowing what stage you're in so you know how to get to the next stage. And I'm happy to share the stages if you want.
Yes, definitely. What are the stages?
Okay, sure. So they're all mapped out in Trust Again. It's what our coaches are all certified in within the PBT Institute. I'll give you a little version here. So if you can imagine 4 legs of the table, stage 1, where let's say the 4 legs are physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. What I saw with everybody was this real heavy lean on the physical and the mental, thinking and doing, not really prioritizing the emotional and the spiritual, feeling and being. But if a table only had 2 legs, easy for the table to topple over. That's us. Stage 2, shock. We're blindsided. D-Day, Discovery Day. And it's the breakdown of the body, the mind, and the worldview. So right here, you've ignited the stress response. You're headed for every single stress-related symptom, illness, condition, disease. Your mind is in a complete and total state of chaos and overwhelm. You can't wrap your mind around the information you just learned. This makes no sense. And your worldview has just been shattered. Your worldview is your mental model, the rules that prevent chaos, that govern you. Don't go there, trust this person. This is how life works. And in a moment, everything that you've known to be real and true has just crashed and burned. The bottom is bottomed down on you. And a new bottom hasn't been formed yet. And that's why it's so terrifying. But think about it. If the bottom were to bottom out on you, what would you do? You grab hold of anything and everything you could to stay safe and stay alive. And that's stage 3. Survival instincts emerge. It's the most practical out of all of the stages. If you can't help me, get out of my way. How will I survive this experience? Who can I trust? Where do I go? But here's the trap. Stage 3 is by far, hands down, the most common stage to get stuck in. And here's why. Once you've figured out how to survive your experience, because it feels so much better than the shock and trauma of where you just came from, you think it's good. And because you don't know there's anywhere else to go, transformation doesn't even begin until stage 4. But because you don't know there's anywhere else to go, you start planting roots here. And 4 things happen. You're not supposed to stay here, but you don't know that. And 4 things happen. The first thing is you start getting all these small self benefits. You get to be right. You get your story. You get someone to blame. You get a target for your anger. You know, you don't have to do the hard work of learning to trust again. Can I trust you? Should I trust you? Forget it. I'm not trusting anybody. So you plant deeper roots. You're not supposed to be here, but you don't know that.
Right.
Now, because you're here longer than you should, the mind starts doing things like, well, maybe you deserved it. Maybe you're not that great. Maybe this, maybe that. So you plant deeper roots. Again, you're not supposed to be here, but you don't know that. Now, because these are the thoughts you're thinking, and this is the energy you have, this is the energy you're putting out there. So like energy attracts like energy. So now you're calling circumstances and people and relationships towards you to confirm, yep, this is where you belong. Gets worse, but I'll get you out of here. Because it feels so bad, but you don't know there's anywhere else to go, right here is where you start using food, drugs, alcohol, work, TV, keeping busy, reckless behavior, anything to numb, avoid, and distract yourself from what's so painful to feel or face. So think about it. You do that for a day, a week, a month. Now it's a habit, a year, 10 years, 20 years. And I can see someone 20 years out and say, you know, that emotional eating you're doing, or that numbing in front of the TV, or that drinking, do you think it has anything to do with your betrayal? And they look at me like I'm crazy. They say that happened 20 years ago. But all they did was put themselves in stage 3 and stay there. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. Yes.
Yeah. And that's why, trust again, the 5 stages are all in here, but I found everyone was getting stuck in stage 3. So from hardened to healed is just for stage 3, for stage 3, because that's where everybody's landing. Anyway, if you're willingness is a big word here. If you're willing to let go of the small self benefits, grieve, mourn the loss, bunch of things you need to do, you move to stage 4. Stage 4 is finding and adjusting to a new normal. So here's where you acknowledge, I can't undo my betrayal, but I control what I do with it. Just in that decision, you start turning down the stress response. So you're not healing just yet, but now you stop the massive damage you were causing in stages 2 and stage 3. What also happens is when you make that decision, it's like if you were to ever move to a new house, office, condo, apartment, whatever. You don't have all your stuff there. It's not quite cozy yet, but it's going to be okay. And when you're in that space, you're calming the nervous system. You're healing a little bit. But think about it too. If you were to move, you don't bring everything with you, right? You don't take those things that don't represent who you want to be in your new space. And what I found was if your friends weren't there for you, right here you've outgrown them. If they don't, and people say to me all the time, I've had these friends 10, 20, 30 years, is it me? Yeah. If they don't rise, they don't come. You're changing. You're undergoing a transformation. Anyway, when you're in this space and you're making it okay, you're making it kind of mentally okay and kind of mentally home, you move into the 5th most beautiful stage. And this is healing, rebirth, and a new worldview. The body starts to heal. Self-love, self-care, eating well, exercising. You didn't have the bandwidth for that earlier. Now you do. Your mind is healing. You're making new rules. You're making new boundaries based on what you see so clearly now. And you have a new worldview based on the whole road you just traveled. And the 4 legs of the table, in the beginning, it was all about the physical and the mental. By this point, we're solidly grounded because we're focused on the emotional and the spiritual too. Those are the 5 stages.
We could do a whole episode on just those 5, probably just on number 3. Yeah. So just so our audience can be, sure and for certain, what's the post-betrayal syndrome and how do we know we have it?
Yeah, post-betrayal syndrome is the physical, mental, and emotional symptoms that I mentioned. I read you the stats from it. So, I mean, the easiest thing is just to take the post-betrayal syndrome quiz. And then this way they'll see to what extent they're struggling. But it's so common to think that, it's stress or it's aging. No, it's not. It's your unhealed betrayal.
Go ahead.
And I was going to say, and this could be the stats I read to you. It's not necessarily from a new betrayal. Those stats, with the gut issues, with the sleep issues, with all of it could be from a betrayal that happened decades ago.
Because you haven't healed.
Because that's the truth right there. It takes, we think time heals it. And it doesn't. It may soften it a bit, but it does not heal it. And my study proved it. There were 3 groups in the study who did not heal. And, I went into it thinking, the ones who were the hardest hit would probably grow the least because they had so much more to overcome. That had nothing to do with it at all. Nothing.
And that's so true, because like you said, if we haven't done the work and we haven't overcome, the 4 stages to step into stage 5, we're just carrying it over from relationship to relationship, from event to event.
100%. I mean, it's like one of the classic signs of an unhealed betrayal is repeat betrayal. The face has changed, but it's the same thing. Like looking at my experience here, it was my family. And then later it was my husband. And then I made that, for me, that was the biggest decision I could make. I didn't know how I was going to pay for it. I didn't know how I was going to manage the time, but that was the first thing I ever did for me. It was always about everybody else. And look what happened. It changed my life. And we also learned, just to kind of close the loop on that, rebuilding is always a choice. Whether you rebuild yourself and move on, and that's what I did with my family. It just wasn't an option to rebuild with them. Or if the situation lends itself, if you're willing, if you want to, you rebuild something entirely new, like from the ground up new, with the person who hurt you. And that's what I do with my husband. As 2 completely transformed people, not long ago, we married each other again. New rings, new vows, new dress, and our 4 kids as our bridal party. And that's what betrayal does. Everything absolutely crashes and burns. And because of that, you have this opportunity to build something totally different, whether that's a totally new you or a totally new collective you.
So just in case our audience missed it, so the betrayal that occurred with your husband, separated, you went through the work, you healed, and you guys ended up being remarried again.
And he did too. See, that's the thing. Betrayal will show you who someone truly is, or it'll wake them up to who they temporarily became. And for me, that was, I've been in the ICU for 11 days, but nothing was harder than the work I did to move through that. And the way true healing works, it really has nothing to do with the other person. And everybody who comes into the PBT Institute, they're like, oh, I just want to be okay with my partner again. We'll never guarantee that, because what happens is, very often when you do the work, if that other person isn't willing or doesn't want to, you will completely outgrow them. And so what happens a lot is people don't want to do that. So can you see my hands right here? I'm going to show you something.
Yes.
You'll never forget this. Okay. So let's say you're here and then there's a betrayal, shattering of trust, and that's it. And you're so brokenhearted and you're so upset. You're like, let's just get back together. Well, all you keep doing is this, right? And if it's not this person, it's someone else, but you're still staying here. What we do within the PBT Institute is the guarantee, and all we do is get you here. We're having you increase to your physical, mental, emotional best. But what happens is, if all you want to do is make sure you're here, you're going to do this work, and then you keep sabotaging yourself. You're like, okay, because this person's here and you don't want to outgrow them. But then you get frustrated because you're like, I like it here. Why can't they do this? But they're not ready. So eventually what happens is, if this person doesn't do the work, you get this. You see what I mean? With this person, like, what happened to you? You're different. And you're like, ooh, So the whole idea is, you do this on your own. If this person does this, that's truly up to them. If not, you do this. But at the very least, when you do this and you are committed to staying here, no budging, nothing, this person may step up, but at the very least, this shows up. You play in a whole different field. That's what healing from betrayal, that's the work we do anyway. We have you go like this so that we don't know if this person is going to do this. This is where you're going to live, though. And then life is just so much better here than always doing this.
That's awesome. So I want to make sure that, just for our audience to know, what will be 3 tips on learning to trust again?
Trust is like a brick wall. The only way I know of a brick wall being built is brick by brick by brick. And that's why, and really it's the same thing. Every opportunity someone has to show that they're trustworthy, that's one brick in that brick wall. Now imagine the very person who built it goes and shatters the whole thing. You can look at the brick wall and say, I don't have the least bit of interest in watching that thing get rebuilt. However, if you do, your job is to be willing, and that's enough. The other person's job is to be a really good bricklayer. So here's the rebuilding trust piece, which I want to make sure everybody hears this. What I see so often is person whose trust has been shattered, right? They're looking at the rubble of bricks. The person who shattered it isn't really all that interested in rebuilding it. So the person whose trust is shattered is like, okay, I'll build it.
Right.
Well, that's why they don't trust. They never feel safe. They never feel valued because there's really no effort, you see? So it's that dynamic. That person who shattered the trust has to do an amazing job of rebuilding it. Same way it went up the first time. Every opportunity they have to show that they're trustworthy. That's one brick in that brick wall.
So how does an individual learn to trust again?
Yeah.
So I know.
Yeah. So, I mean, I teach a 4-step trust rebuilding process. What typically happens is people go right for, I just want to trust that other person. And then when they don't build the foundation before that, it's always shaky and unstable. You have to rebuild, one of the biggest things that happens with the shattering of trust is you don't trust that person you trusted the most. And then you don't trust yourself. Because you're like, I'm a bright person. How did I not see? How did I not know? So think of the ripple effect here. You don't trust that person. Now you don't trust yourself. So then you think, if I can't trust the person I trusted the most, and I don't trust myself, how in the world am I going to trust in anybody or anything? So self-trust, rebuilding self-trust is huge.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about the PBT Institute.
Okay, so the PBT Institute is the Post-Betrayal Transformation Institute. There's no space like it. The reason why it happened was because when the 5 stages were discovered, you can't make discoveries like that and go back to business as usual. So I took the 5 stages, put them into a program, and it blew up. And then everybody wanted to work with me, and I was like, well, how do we do that? So I created our certification program, so coaches and therapists and healers can learn the 5 stages. That blew up. And then I thought about it and I was like, well, I know what the research proved what we need. And there's like the wrong support does more harm than good, keeps you stuck, all these things. So now that I know what works, what would happen if we put everything that works under one roof? That's the PBT Institute. So we have our certified coaches teaching daily classes, and they all specialize in different things, in narcissism, in reconciliation, in addiction, in divorce, in everything. And then we have master classes with the most amazing experts, self-paced programs, so people could just move through the stages at their own pace, and the type of community that lifts and inspires and moves you forward. Not the kind of community that keeps you stuck. There's really nothing like it.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So tell us a little bit about your books and where can our audience grab a copy?
Sure. So this is From Hardened to Healed is my 6th book, but I would say Trust Again. This maps out the 5 stages. From Hardened to Healed is all about stage 3. Best thing to do is take the Healed or Hardened quiz so you know which stage you're in. And they can just find that at healedorhardenedquiz.com.
Beautiful, beautiful. So as we get ready to wrap up, is there anything else that you would like to mention, talk about that we haven't had an opportunity to discuss?
Yeah, I would just say I know how painful it is. I've been through it. I didn't do anything anyone else couldn't do. It's just if you owe it to yourself to do something really good with something really, really painful. And you can. And there wasn't a roadmap when I was going through it. If you're willing, that's the biggest word here. If you're willing to move through the stages, we got the rest. You owe it to yourself to heal. There's a version of you so healthy, so healed, so confident, so strong. And he or she is waiting for you at stage 5. So stop playing around in stage 3. You don't belong there.
Beautiful. And what would you say is a fearless tip for 2022 that whoever's listening or watching to us that they can implement immediately and start doing the work?
Yeah, I would say if there's one thing you need to just get rid of, it's all your self-doubt. Just get rid of that doubt. It's the biggest waste of your time. If you're questioning yourself and wondering, can I do this? Should I do this? Get rid of that. If you have an idea, it's because you're the one to do it. Get rid of the self-doubt. Do what you're here to do. Heal and make the world better because of it.
Beautiful. I love it. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to another episode of Fearless Fridays. And I hope that the conversation with Dr. Debi Silber was inspirational. Make sure to check out the website so you can take the quiz and be inspired. And in her own words, the only way to start healing is step by step, break by break. Remember that you are a priority and you matter. Until next time. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope that you found this episode inspiring and motivating. Don't forget to leave a comment so you can win a fabulous prize at the end of the month. You can leave a review on iTunes, or you can head over to YouTube or my Fearless Living Coach page on Facebook if you are an Android user. And as always, remember, you are fearless, you are fabulous, you are a priority, and you matter. See you next time.